All right, so what I'd like to do now is wrap up this video by showing you some artifacts that you can create using rings. So the one here is fairly straightforward. It is 3 circles, and this kind of stuff you'll find a lot in Celtic art and even art before that. This is this Triskelion pattern, which involves sort of 3 circular kinds of things. This one here, I hope we all know. This is essentially the Olympic logo. However, from a technical point of view, the Olympic rings, if you actually look at the real logo, are interlocking rings, where these rings here are just placed on top. Now, it is possible in Bricklayer with some more advanced stuff to create a 2-dimensional artifact where the rings actually are overlapping in the same way that they are in the Olympic logo. This one here, you have sort of 2 variations. One, if you notice, the empty center is closer to the edge of the outer ring, and the other one is closer towards the center. And so what you're basically doing is you are creating rings, changing their radius and moving their center by 1. And then changing their radius, moving their center by 1, and so on. This one here is essentially a checkerboard, where instead of, like in a chessboard, instead of having black and white squares, here you have rings, and they are overlapping. So that creates sort of this cool pattern that comes out of all of this. And of course, even though I mentioned that one could create this in an earlier video, I mentioned that one could create this using circles, probably the more natural way to think about this thing is in terms of rings. So I feel like I have to include it here. This one is particularly cool, and you can actually do this in Bricklayer Lite. Students have done this before. So what you do here is you have 4 rings. You start out with 4 rings, one on each side, the midpoint of each side of your virtual space. And the initial rings are touching in the center. And the top and bottom ones are also touching. And then you increase the radius. You leave the centers alone, and you keep increasing the radius of the rings, but you do it in a particular order. So you always go around. When you increase the radius, you do this one, then the top, then the right one, and the bottom one, and then you increase the radius, you go around again, and you go around again, and you go around again. And because the radiuses are getting bigger, the rings will start overlapping each other, and the last thing that you place is what you see in Bricklayer, and so this pattern comes out magically. This is pretty cool. I think this is particularly pretty. And then when you get to level 5, you can do things with rings in 3 dimensions as well. Thanks.